In the brain, in the cranium, there's the cerebrum. And in the cerebrum, in particular, the claustrum. The claustrum is sitting right there in the middle of the head. From the claustrum, there is a secretion brain fluid. And this fluid is an oil. And in ancient times, this fluid was called, in Greek, Christos. In other words, the Christ. It's this magnificent fluid which comes from the cerebrum and pours down the spinal cord. It goes down the spinal cord and reaches the sacral plexus, right next to the sacrum, which are the 5 second bottommost fused vertebrae bones at the bottom of the spinal column. The bottommost portion of the spinal column is called the coccyx. Then just above that is the sacrum, 5 fused bones, so the sacral plexus is connected to the sacrum, and the magnificent fluid comes from the cerebrum, pours down the spinal cord, and comes to the bottommost part of the spinal cord. The claustrum is also known as the holy claustrum, simply because of this beautiful oil, the Christos, that is produced and secreted. The word secret comes from secretion, because this secretion is a secret, and the sacrum is the sacred part of the secret. As the secretion pours down the spinal cord and reaches the sacrum, this is the beautiful way in which all of our bodies have been designed, and the spinal cord is just an extension of the brain. It also does thinking, and the holy claustrum is otherwise known as the Santa claustrum, because this fluid that goes down to the sacred plexus is a sacred fluid, and this is where the story of Santa Claus bringing presents down the chimney originates from. It's a story of physiology, and the Bible is a beautiful manual of physiological regeneration. What happens with the fluid is that every month when our moon is in the sign where your sun was when you were born, every month there is a seed planted in the solar plexus, which is just above the sacral plexus, and that seed or germ is the oil, the Christ, which is born in Bethlehem, because the solar plexus is otherwise known as the Bethlehem, where the seed or Christ is born, and that seed needs to return whence it came, in the midbrain. You see, as the oil ascends the spinal cord, the vibration of the oil of the Christ increases, and you see, first of all, the oil is differentiated in the pineal gland and the pituitary gland before it is sent down the spinal cord, and the pineal gland is the electric portion and the pituitary gland is the magnetic portion. So the oil is differentiated and it is brought down the spinal cord via the pingala and the ida nerves. These are known as the kundalini and the kinderbuffer. So it arrives at the sacral plexus and awaits for the germinating of the seed once a month, 12 times a year. And if we are able to transmute that seed and cause it to rise, as it rises in the spinal cord, it eventually reaches the medulla oblongata and the pons and the midbrain, and it crosses the vagus nerve, otherwise known as the pneumogastric nerve. It's a nerve which descends from the brain area, from the pineal and the pituitary glands, and it feeds the lungs and the stomach. It's a network of nerves, and this network of nerves is called the tree of life. And the ancients knew that this seed that is born in Bethlehem once a month is the Christ, and if one was to obtain from sex during that period, that oil and seed would be saved, and it would rise and it would burst through the heart chakra, through the throat chakra, and eventually the oil would arrive with its higher vibration, because at the bottom the oil has a very low vibratory rate, whereas the proper practices of meditation, breathing, good eating, and good peaceful behaviour, one is able to rise that Christ, so it crosses the vagus nerve at the top of the spinal column. The 33 vertebrae of the spinal column you see, because the Christ was crucified at 33 years of age. When the oil arrives at the very, very top, there awaiting is the optic thalamus, an egg-shaped organ located in the middle of the head. When it crosses this pneumogastric nerve, this is called the crucifixion. The oil is not killed nor destroyed, but it is magnified 1,000-fold, and the oil then touches the optic thalamus, and for 2.5 days remains in a condition that is considered to be dead. and then reaches the pineal gland after 2.5 days and illuminates the optic thalamus and the pineal gland. The optic thalamus was known as the light of the world by the Egyptians and the Greek because they knew their physiology and anatomy, and they knew that this precious oil which descended from the claustrum, from the cerebrum, and was differentiated in the pineal and pituitary glands, and descended the spinal cord. They knew that it would ascend eventually, and that the enlightened portion of mankind were able to cause this Christ, this oil, to ascend, so that it would ascend to the optic thalamus and cause it to be lightened. What in turn happens is that millions of brain cells were dormant are now awakened. And you see there are practices and there are things that are very detrimental about this oil, or detrimental to the oil. For instance, overeating and alcohol and sex practiced at the wrong time. These destroy the seed, and this is known as eating from the tree of life. The ancients knew that once the oil was depleted because of righteous living, the fleshly organism dies. Death results from using up all the oil. The oil that descends from the cerebrum is known as the manna from heaven, because heaven means heaved up, and the head, the cranium, the dome which sits on top of the torso, that was known as the heavens, and the heart area and the heart chakra was known as the Midgard, or the middle garden, and the genitive area was known as the Sodom and Gomorrah, the area of desire, animal desire, and otherwise known as Egypt and hell and the world.